Shooting it raw?
Yes. Shooting it raw. Hello, friends, and welcome to the podcast. Welcome to Shooting It Raw. This week, another great episode I'm reissuing. This one was with Gary Stokes back in November of 2020. I'm reissuing it because Gary was also on the Sea Shepherd ships. I mean, Gary was connected to Paul Watson, and I re-released Paul Watson's episode last week. So this is a really good fitting follow-up. So check it out. Learn, be inspired, and let's protect our oceans. Okay, thanks.
Photography means for me, it's the most powerful weapon in the world. I see the cameras, and you can capture moments in time that can change the world, and influence people by your images. So, you can evoke all kinds of emotions, whether it's sadness, fear, hatred, just awaken people's inner consciousness.
Gary Stokes, thank you so much. So thank you so much for joining me on Shooting It Raw. This is such a pleasure. This is such an honor. I've known you for, at least a decade. And I mean, when I think of a Hong Kong champion, I think of Alex Hofford. I think of you for sure. And if anything, Alex isn't here anymore. So you're the one on the ground, in the water, on the sand. And oh man, such a pleasure, such an honor.
No, thanks for having me, Ran. It's great to catch up.
Okay, so let's dive in with the first photo. Okay, let me just describe it. You are leaning on your elbows in the sand. I can just see you're wearing a wetsuit or a rash vest of sort. You're wearing gloves, plastic gloves. In your hand is a medical mask. And in front of you, splayed out, are probably about 20 or so medical masks that I assume you've collected off the shore. And behind you, there's you're on Hong Kong beach. So behind you can just see the rocks of either on an island or something, and there may be a boat behind you. It looks like a Zodiac of some sort. Yep. Yeah. Okay, so
pretty good description. So that photo was taken just yesterday, so that's why I included it.
Oh wow, perfect.
So I haven't even put it out on social media yet, so you're the first to see it.
Nice.
Back in February, we've been doing these research trips out to the Soko Islands on marine debris and studying microplastics and trash. And it was back in February that we suddenly started noticing all these face masks washing up. Mm-hmm. And we collected on that 100-meter stretch of beach about 70 face masks. And that's when we realized, we're going to have a big problem here. And that was obviously this was 6 weeks after people started using masks en masse. And my colleague out there, Naomi Brennan, who also took this photo, we collected up all these masks. I put them on a piece of rope, and I just said, "Hey, Naomi, take a picture." We took that picture. I posted it out. We had over 1 million views by the following morning. And then since then, it just went absolutely crazy. So when we talk about pictures having an influence, I mean, that picture has been around the world more times than probably a satellite, of me holding up a string of masks on the beach. Not something you really want to be made famous for, but, it really did wake up conscious people about what they're doing with their masks, which was the only intention, was just like, hey guys, be a bit more responsible. We know there is a pandemic going on. Please wear a mask, but try and wear reusable, because this is where they're all ending up. Mm-hmm. And then since then, my colleague Till, who's my partner in Oceans Asia, and his research team we've been putting together a big paper, which is about to be released. And we've calculated that roughly 1.56 billion masks will enter the marine environment this year. 1.56 billion. So that's a scary amount.
Yeah, that's a number to for sure scare people, because these masks
Yeah.
are, they're is it PET plastic? Like which kind of plastic do
Well,
they use?
they're made of spun plastics, polypropylene and all sorts,
Right.
and they just break down into smaller and smaller parts. I mean, I went out there yesterday just to comb the beach, and we had an hour because we were doing some acoustic work with the dolphins. So in 1 hour we collected 54 just on that same beach.
Wow.
So, I mean, that's, and this is the Sokos, which is uninhabited.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody goes there. That's why we use it as a research place for our plastic studies.
So let's
It's, it's just what came in on the tide.
right. Okay, the Sokos Islands are how many islands are we talking about?
So the Sokos is a small cluster of, it's about 6 islands, two larger ones. They're located at the southwest of Lantau. So they're right near the border with the Hong Kong border with China. They're at the entrance of the Pearl River Delta, so one of the 5 big river systems of China. So, we have a lot of marine traffic going in and up and down there. But the Soko Islands are kind of unique because the only habitation they really had was from the 70s and 80s, when we had a Vietnamese prison camp out there, or refugee camp, not prison camp, sorry, but refugee camp was built out there, and that's now just the foundations left.
Oh.
So nobody lives there, but it is the home, and it's also the overlapping home or range of the Chinese white dolphin and also the finless porpoise. So we have these 2 resident species in Hong Kong, and that in the Sokos is where they overlap, which is why we do a lot of the dolphin and finless porpoise studies out there. So it's a unique place. It's beautiful. It's my little special place for what I like to call social distancing.
Uh-huh. It's a very powerful image, because your face is very neutral. You've got your sunglasses like resting on your forehead. There's a nice bright sun. You're looking at the camera. Props to Naomi for making this portrait, because from somebody listening to the audio, to your voice, and also maybe looking at the image, your face communicates this, like, come on guys, what the fuck, man, like, is this, we have to do better. And
yeah. I mean, well, we have to do better in all areas. I mean, what you don't see in that picture is the rest of the beach, which is completely covered in trash. And it's almost, you almost feel a bit of a hypocrite. I'm walking amongst the trash looking for masks, and yet there's just bottles and packaging and just, you name it. I mean, everything you can find there. And yet that's become almost the norm. And now we're looking for something unique like the face mask.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, every time we go back there, Naomi is a cetacean scientist,
Okay.
But we get on the beach and we see all the trash, and it's just so soul destroying. We just look at each other and just think, oh God, what are we doing? Yeah.
When I met you, it was probably 2006 or so. And
it was when this crazy guy did this protest in the Shark Street, walking through along all the shark fin vendors with a shark hat.
Oh, that old thing. And makeup.
Yeah.
Hey, don't forget
and
the makeup.
And the makeup. And everybody, all the shark fin traders were thinking, who is this crazy guy? And I was thinking the same.
Yeah.
It was cool as. It was the first protest, I believe, in the shark fin streets of Hong Kong.
Right, but
so
enough about me. Enough about me. Let's talk about you, because look,
I had to get that in there, Ran.
Sure. But look, like, at the time, did you have your marine conservation organizations, or were you? Because I know you as a photographer, as a photojournalist.
Yeah, I was doing photography full time, and I was a dive instructor as well, and obviously, as a diver and a photographer and doing underwater photography, you started to sort of spiral into the conservation world, really, because you're seeing the degradation of what's going on in the environment.
Yeah, you can't act.
You can't unsee these things, And obviously I have a passion for sharks, and we are in the shark fin, ground zero. So obviously that was drawing to it. And there was the three amigos, as I call it, which was myself, Alex Hofford, as you mentioned, and Paul Hilton.
Mm-hmm.
So the three of us were photographers. We were, doing all sorts of corporate photography, some news journalism, and and obviously we're all passionate about sharks.
Yeah, you guys are amazing. I mean, you're all amazing in your own ways. So when did you start your the proper marine organization?
Well, I mean, back at that
Plug
time,
it.
I just wanted to have a little platform where I could write stories and put my pictures. And I set up Oceanic Love, if you remember. And I wanted to do a clothing brand that was sort of fashion for awareness. And some of my images that I'd taken got picked up by Sea Shepherd. And I had been with Paul Hilton to Tonga filming humpbacks. And that was the year when Japan put humpbacks onto the list of their kill list, 50 humpbacks. And that really set something afire inside me. I started looking around and seeing what I could do and who was doing stuff. I found obviously Greenpeace were going down there and holding up banners at the time. And then I saw this video of this crazy guy doing exactly what I thought we needed to do, and that was put the ships in the way and just blockade and stop by whatever means necessary that was, within the realms of the law. But, the two main rules were nobody gets hurt and you don't break any laws. But other than that, get in the way and stop them killing the whales. And that was Sea Shepherd. And I saw a video, and then a couple of months later, it was just bizarre. They contacted me for some pictures of bluefin tuna and then invited me to come on board as a photographer. And I went to Antarctica in 2010, and my life changed completely. I came back and I was just, this is what I want to do.
Wow.
And I ended up becoming the director for Sea Shepherd for Asia. So one of the global directors. And
are you still with Sea Shepherd?
no, so I was with Sea Shepherd until about 2.5 years ago. And through funding reasons, basically, decided to wind up some areas, to get funding and put towards the ships. So they decided to shut down Asia, which didn't make any sense to me at the time, really, because we weren't costing a lot. But, obviously, when I joined, we had 3 ships. We now have, Sea Shepherd now have 10, 11 ships.
Oh, wow.
And ships cost a lot of money to run. So the money needs to be, and the one thing that I did love about Sea Shepherd was the money went to the fuel tanks, basically.
Amazing.
Any money you donate to Sea Shepherd isn't squandered. It does go directly to the front line. And that's what really attracted me, because there's too many NGOs that just squander it on advertising and fancy offices and big salaries for the top people. And Sea Shepherd were literally doing what they said. They put the money where the mouth was and got out there.
Wow.
So they obviously had to cut money where they could, and direct it to the ships, which were in Mexico and Africa at the time. So
does that mean you shifted your efforts?
So I then, obviously I'm doing a lot of work here with, around the region, not just in Hong Kong, but I'm doing a lot of work on obviously the shark fin industry, but also on a wider scope, the illegal fishing, IUU fishing, working with different governments around the region. And then obviously I work with plastics and things like that. So I still need to carry on doing what I'm doing. And even, Sea Shepherd realized that. So I set up Oceans Asia with my colleague, Till, who was my roommate when I went to Antarctica. So we set that up. And we're basically, our tagline was intelligence-based conservation. And basically we want to look at more the sort of law enforcement, the legal sort of side of things. So our investigations are based on fact and solid evidence rather than speculation and working on empathy and making people feel sorry for the sharks or whatever. It's like, let's get them on the law, get them on something that sticks, and get prosecutions.
Let me just plug that. The people I get on the podcast are all doing amazing work, and you're way up there, and I just love what you're doing. So let's plug. So it's www.oceansasia.org, right?
Yep, that's right.
Awesome. You hinted at it in the conversation in terms of illegal fishing, and the second image you sent through is, I'm assuming it's a Chinese boat of fishermen. It's not a very big boat. It's it's considerably.
This one is a gillnet boat, a mainland gillnet boat that is coming into Hong Kong waters. So, in that previous photo you mentioned about the Zodiac there, that's Seawolf. That's my small rib that we have, rigid inflatable boat. And with that gets us out onto the waters. So obviously with COVID-19, we're not getting to travel. We're not getting to go to around the region and do stuff, but we still have so much that we can do at home. So, Seawolf allows us to get out there, do our recordings for the acoustics, get to these remote locations. But one of the big things we're working on at the moment is illegal fishing in Hong Kong. So we're getting boats that are coming across the border from the mainland and basically poaching in Hong Kong waters. And we've been identifying vessels that have been coming in, building a database of images and evidence, and working together with the AFCD, the Agricultural Fisheries Conservation Department, and also the Marine Police. So we've been working closely with both those. The illegal fishing falls under the remit of AFCD.
Yeah.
So they're the ones who are supposed to be, prosecuting or making arrests and things like that. But sometimes, obviously these fishermen don't want to be stopped. And they need to call in the Marine Police, who have the assets available. They have the fast boats. They have the guns for starters. So if they do need to do boardings, they can do boardings quite safely.
Yeah.
We called one in last week, and the Marine Police were fantastic. I mean, they literally sent the charge of the Light Brigade. We had 3 fast interceptor boats that are, they'll do 50, 60 knots.
Oh, wow.
With a full-arm boarding team. And they pursued this Chinese vessel that had come across the border. They pursued it into Chinese waters.
Oh, wow.
Across the border. So they also got permission from Guangzhou for hot pursuit, and they brought the boat back and they prosecuted it.
Oh, great. So
at the moment, I believe it's actually today, the fishermen are in court.
Wow. So the big questions that pop up in my mind are, one, are you using some of the experience that you gained with Sea Shepherd out on the water? I mean, like the
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I was doing a lot of this activism, as you know, before I joined Sea Shepherd, and that's why, as a photographer, the image is so powerful and so useful. So, what I'm using when I go out on the boat at the moment is drones. I am big into drones with my work. They allow me I can see a boat maybe 2-3 kilometers away before they even notice me.
Yeah.
We stop Seawolf, and I launch a small drone from there, from a Mavic. And I fly the 2 kilometers over, and I'll be above them filming them without them even knowing. I can zoom in on them, and I can actually get them, and that's all geolocation.
Wow.
So we've got time, date, we've got the evidence.
That's great.
We've got them actually fishing illegally. And even the AFCD were just saying, how do you get this? Because whenever we go, we don't get to film them.
Right.
Well, it's because you come in a boat that's so noisy, both the Marine Police and the AFCD launchers, you can hear from almost 5 kilometers away.
Yeah.
So the fishermen just drop the nets in the water with a float and just go back across the border and wait. And it's really quite frustrating. So what's happening now is we're starting to evolve, and I'm more like the forward operating, the forward observer. I can see them, I can get all the footage and the evidence and that, and then I call in the Marine Police and they'll come in and, if they needed my evidence, I could provide it.
What's their attitude to you? Like, do they think like, oh, great, this guy again? Or are they genuinely appreciative? Are they like, what is when you're you're talking to them, how do they?
Who, the fishermen or the authorities?
The
The
yeah.
the fishermen don't like me for some reason. No, I mean, AFCD have been really, really appreciative, really supportive. Whenever I'm sending stuff into them, they're just, they add it to their database, and the guys at AFCD are brilliant. I mean, they've really been great.
Yeah.
Marine Police, I was invited to the headquarters to
Okay.
give a full briefing and
Oh, wicked.
presentation on illegal fishing.
Wicked.
So I went and saw all the top brass and gave a full presentation of, this is what I've seen. And obviously it's not your remit to do any of this, but
Yeah.
if AFCD asks, here's what we've got.
Right.
And then Marine Police said, yep, absolutely, this is great, brilliant work. Let's do something on this. So they really have cranked down. You may have seen in the media, there's been posts coming out, and there's quite a few more illegal fishing
Wow.
busts, which is great. And that's, that's testament to both agencies actually working together and working hard.
Great. One of the things I see, or if I just realized I haven't done, is kind of explain what the photo is. So essentially, it's a you'd say a 30-foot boat, I guess, Chinese
So
vessel.
that boat is, so we had several. We had a fleet of what they call snake net boats, and they were coming from further west down the coast, a couple of 100 kilometers down, and they come up and they drop this, like, it's almost like a lobster pot, but like a square concertina, and they run, it's like a box that they join together 30-foot segments, and they make maybe 2 or 3 kilometers, and they lie on the seafloor. Those were the snake net boats. We documented about 4 that we saw regularly. We gave it to AFCD, they gave it to the mainland authorities, and suddenly now we don't see those boats anymore.
Oh,
So I
okay.
don't know what happened with those.
Right.
The boat in the picture that you're referring to is what we call a gill net boat. They use the monofilament gill nets, and they're dropping these, obviously at the moment, because of COVID, the high traffic of Macau high-speed ferries that were going down through the channel south of Lantau has stopped. So we have no high-speed traffic, which is great news for the dolphins. And we're seeing all these dolphins coming back to that area and utilizing that area. But the problem is we've got all these illegal fishing boats now coming in and setting these walls of death, as I call them.
Wow.
I mean, gill nets are just invisible. And obviously for a marine mammal getting caught in one of these, they need to breathe air. And if
Sure.
they get caught in one, they are, it's game over.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm really focusing on these gill net boats. We've identified at least 14 of them.
Oh, wow.
And documented them. And, they're basically mainland fishermen that are coming into our waters because in 2012, we stopped trawling. So we used to have these big boats, big industrial boats with their big long arms out the side, dragging the seafloor up and destroying the entire ecosystem. And that was banned in Hong Kong waters. So what we've seen now is fish life exploding back and really bouncing back. And nature will come back very quickly if we just give it a chance. And obviously because of that, we've got loads of fish.
Right.
And across the border, they don't.
Yeah, exactly.
So the fishermen are now coming in and poaching.
Right. So in the photo has essentially like 1/3 of the image is the boat. On the boat, there are like 3 guys wearing like overalls, dragging in the fish nets. The sky is kind of overcast. There's like a low ceiling, low cloud. Not too far, maybe 1 or 2 kilometers in the background. You could see a little bit of land, some islands, I guess.
Yeah, that's South Lantau.
Oh, that is South Lantau. Okay. And so how did you get this close for this image?
So, I've got very close. I mean, I've got close enough to actually almost touch them sometimes. So what I do is I'll fly the drone in, I'll get the evidence I need, and then I'll come in with the boat and we'll come right up next to them. And I literally come alongside with a big 7200 lens and I'm photographing them and I'm almost getting portrait face photos.
Which you need.
Now, what I used to do, because I didn't want to waste police time, I mean, calling the police every time, and what was happening was they would just run for the border. So I decided that, and it was kind of fun at the beginning. I got a friend of mine who's an actress, Chinese actress. and I asked her to record me an audio message that I broadcast over a loudspeaker. And the message was basically in Mandarin, and it was, you are fishing illegally in Hong Kong waters. We are documenting your activities and will pass to the authorities.
Oh,
Please
good.
leave immediately. Well, I was going out at night, so I'd be out in the middle of the ocean at night, lights off, and I'd be sitting there floating. And then a trawler, the big trawlers would come in, and I would stalk them and make sure they were well and truly inside Hong Kong waters. Sometimes they were in as close as Shek Pik prison, which is right up
to the
good 8 or 9 kilometers inside. And I would sneak up and then get really close. And then what I would do, because the ocean's so quiet out there at night, I would turn on this broadcast and put on a big spotlight. So all they would see is a massive spotlight come on, this message come out in like a very authoritarian voice. And you've never seen people run so quick. They couldn't get the nets in fast enough. They run across the border.
Good
and it was effective to get them out and also to disrupt the fishing, because time is money. So long as your nets are not in the water, you're not making money. And I was doing this regularly, and then I started even doing it in the daytime off of Tai O on the west coast of Lantau. And the same effect. I would turn up, whether it was with the message or just with the cameras. They knew they were in the wrong, and they knew I'd probably already called the authorities and they're on the way.
Wow.
So they would just run for the borders. So that's why we could get so close. I have had a couple throw things at me. We had one try to run me over when we were out there. But yeah, the gillnet boats, like in that picture, I'm not worried about. The trawlers, even the police told me to back off, which I have, and I'm not touching the trawlers anymore.
Yeah, well, for sure. I mean, they just need to nudge you, and you're gone.
The trawlers are an entity of their own, and I will leave that with the authorities to deal with. They are very big, and they are also, a lot of them are Hong Kong based.
Well, okay.
They're not mainland.
Right.
So.
Oh, dude, so sobering. And speaking of sobering, let's move on to the next image, which is just heartbreaking. Oh, Gary, what is this? Whoa. Okay, so yeah, this is the kind of image that just hits you in the head. So I'm going to describe what we see. Okay, so on the left side of the photo is just a road. It's one of the roads going into this area, for people who don't know, called Kennedy Town, Sai Pun, on Hong Kong Island. On the right, the road is onto the, is basically facing sets of commercial shops. One is called Score Rich Trading Company, and that's the thing about these businesses. They've got these really weird, innocuous sounding names that are, the companies are registered as, like, Million Smiles Trading, or something really just kind of out there.
Happy Oceans Limited, yeah.
And so the image, it's a blue sky above. Far in the distance, you can see like the basically it's the buildings where they have the hydrofoil.
The Macau ferries.
The Macau ferries, thank you very much. And on the right, about 1/3 of the image is drying in the sunshine, hundreds, thousands of tails.
Yep.
Okay, so I know what the story, I can guess what the story is, but why is this, well, how recent is this photo?
That one was a couple of years ago, I think. That was about 2 years ago. I just wanted to show something of what we see virtually every day. You can go down to Shenzhen pretty much any day where the sun's out. I mean, like right now it's gorgeous and there's hardly any humidity. And the shark fin traders, mostly shark fins are arriving in Hong Kong already dried. So they get dried at source. Whichever country is exporting, normally a third world developing country, they've already dried. But quite often, while they're in storage here, they might get damp or moist with the humidity. So quite often they'll vent them and air them out, and they use the streets and the pavements. And you'll be walking through Central, and it's not uncommon to be walking along and seeing pavements or even the road completely blocked
Yeah.
with shark fins.
So okay, so the pavement is this sort of dark 18% gray, if you know anything about photography. It's this kind of really deep, rich gray, and then the fins, the tails, are almost uniformly shaped in terms of size. They're all they're all kind of piled on top of each other, drying in the sun, and they're essentially the same color as the pavement. But because of the shadow and everything, you really kind of see this relief. And I guess they're spilling out of these not canvas, but these like cargo bags, and they're just drying in the sun, and it's
they're actually the tails off of blue sharks, and blue sharks are pretty much the number one chosen shark of choice in the shark fin markets of Hong Kong. They're certainly the most prolific, and that shipment I came across had arrived from Spain, and Spain being one of the first or second largest exporters of shark fin to Hong Kong.
Yeah.
And that shipment came in, and I started photographing. The funny part behind this whole thing was obviously the guy didn't know who I was, and I'm outside and I'm photographing stuff on the street, which is totally legal.
Mm-hmm.
And the sort of shop assistant guys that were the ones who were sort of putting things out and pulling things in, they're shooing me away and telling me I can't. And then the boss of the shop comes out and said, "Oh no, it's no problem. You can take whatever you want. Take whatever photos you want." You know, he was he didn't really care.
Yeah.
And he knew I was legally within my right to photograph whatever I wanted.
Exactly.
And we just got chatting away. And I said, "No, it's just my son is doing a project on sharks." And I put on an Australian accent. In Australia, I said, "I don't know why everybody makes a big deal about all this shark fin stuff, because, you know, we eat all the meat. You know, and sharks are eaten in fish and chips in Australia." And, you know, by doing that, it sort of diffused it. And the guy was pretty cool. And we're standing there, and it was a hot day. As you said, at blue sky, it was a really hot day. And we're standing on the doorstep, and I was like a vampire being waiting to be invited in. And while I'm talking to the guy, he just let me, he said, "Just come inside, it's too hot." So I went inside his shop, and we're chatting away, and I was like playing dumb of like, "Which fins are these? Are these the ones on the top, the jaws ones?" And he's like, "No, those are the pectorals," as he points to this giant 50-kilo sacks, these white sacks that are 50 kilos each. And then I see past his desk, and then there's the storeroom down the back, and it is chocker of sharks and shark fin. And I said, "Wow." And all this time I've got my SLR hanging around my neck, but it's actually recording.
Right.
So I'm recording the entire thing. And then I said, "Is there would it be possible to take a photo of that? It'd be great for my son's school project." He said, "Sure, if you can stand the smell." So I end up standing in this storeroom, just as far as you can see. I mean, God, yeah. I don't even want to think how many sharks would have been in there. And it stank. I mean, it was like the uric acid that you get. It smells like cat's piss, basically. It's got this very unique smell. And I just literally got in there, and while I'm filming, I see all these CCTV cameras around. Wow. And I thought, let's get the hell out of here pretty quick. Because if he finds out at the time, he's got the director of Sea Shepherd Asia standing in his storeroom with a camera, it probably wouldn't go down too well. No. So I got out of there pretty quick, but got the footage.
So for people listening, I just want to stress something about the photo and the scale and all this stuff. So on the street, there's all these shark tails, and I would say they're very, very close in size to one another, and they're probably about, it looks like, so it's a tail, so it kind of looks like a scythe, right? So it's like a kind of, you got a fin at the top, and it kind of goes down, and then it goes to the bottom, and they've been cut off at the tail, so you can see the slice, and in there you could see the dried shark meat, and then the cartilage, and each one is at least 1.5 feet big, maybe even more. And just for scale, let's just say there's at least 1,000 out in the sun, and you have to think that each tail is a shark that is at least, I don't know, like 3 or 4 yards or meters long. So probably a good 400 or 500 pound animal. And 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 this little corner on the street, this one shop, and then as you say, there are bags and bags and bags and bags of stuff inside. It's just mind-boggling that think about how many animals were just harvested like this, and what an impact that would make in the habitat. So it's Spain, right? So Spain is one of the worst culprits when it comes to shark fishing.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, one of the things that I did just to get a gauge of scale, I actually went down there at night and I set up some time-lapse cameras pointing at that shop. And then over the next few days, they were recording. And then I watched the guys come out with one of the sacks and lay out all the fins, and then another one. And then I actually watched as they collected them, and the entire street, not when it was the tails, because the tails are a bit bigger, but when it was just the fins, I could then calculate out how many fins made up that area of, it was 6 bags of sharks. So that's 300 kilos. And I worked out the dimensions of how much it would cover. And then from my photo inside, knowing roughly how many sacks there were, I mean, you could have covered them from Central all the way down to Kennedy Town.
So it's a couple of kilometers.
Along one street. And that's pretty scary.
That's a couple of kilometers, right?
That's one shop.
Yeah.
And we've got about 100 of these shops.
Yeah.
And that's the scale. So when people say 100 million sharks a year, which is a ridiculous number, it's far more than that. I've always said 250 million sharks are dying each year. And when people sort of go, oh, it's impossible, there's not that many sharks in the world. Well, you just need to come down and just have a look, and you can see the scale and the magnitude of it.
Yeah. No, it's heartbreaking. Yeah. And look, like I just to get away from something, I mean, my approach is more like it's just patently unsustainable. And when I had the podcast with Sharon Kwok, she was like, well, here's the thing, because it's dried and this stuff will last forever, they're just sitting on a massive amount of money, right? Like the shopkeepers, they're not going to change.
Well, they don't need to. I mean, it also there is something to bear in mind there. There are shark fin shops that only do shark fin, and then there's the dried seafood, and they do everything. Mm-hmm. And one of the things, obviously they could stop shark fin tomorrow, but still carry on their business. Their business of destroying the ocean
yeah, exactly.
En masse.
Pilfering.
Because what we do see in the markets, obviously, are all the other species. And most of those get completely overlooked. Mm-hmm. I mean, we're just putting together an in-depth study of the sea cucumber industry.
Right.
I mean, people go, sea cucumbers? Seriously? Nobody's done a big campaign on Save the Sea Cucumber, but we need to, because these are all integral species in a biodiverse web of life. And, we need every single one of these species. We all talk about the sharks, but meanwhile, abalone, fish maw,
sure,
which are the swim bladders, the stomachs of fish, mm-hmm. croaker fish. All of these are coming in by the ton every single day. And if you think of a ton of sea cucumber, I mean, that's a hell of a lot of sea cucumbers. And they filter the ocean basically through their stomachs. I mean, they keep everything clear and clean. You take them out, you end up with dead zones. So they're important. Abalone, and a lot of this is also connected with organized crime, funding organized crime.
Yeah.
So, especially with like the abalone in South Africa and things like that, that money then goes to buy weapons and arms, which is then used in, poaching, for example.
Right.
So it's all connected, which is why wildlife crime is, we've been sort of talking with ADM Capital, and that needs to go under the serious crime ordinance in Hong Kong, because at the moment it's just petty crimes. Sure. And we get people bringing in Totawaba swim bladders, which is the endangered swim bladders from Mexico. which is driving the vaquita porpoise to extinction. And these things are worth more than their weight in gold, by gram. We actually had a big bust a year ago, and I was allowed to go in with AFCD and a film crew, and we were actually doing a documentary at the time, Sea of Shadows. And we actually got in there, and there was two guys who bought 2 suitcases full of these swim bladders from Mexico. They flew from Mexico to Korea down to here. These guys flew halfway around the world. They didn't even have a spare change of underpants. They had nothing, just a suitcase full of swim bladders. And then they pleaded they didn't understand that they were illegal. Each of those were over $1.6 million US each case full of them.
Well, okay, so okay.
Sorry.
No,
We should talk
no.
about something nice, actually, shouldn't we? But it's really hard. It's really hard. It's this is the future for our kids. I mean, I've got 2 lovely kids, and we've got to do something because it's happening on our watch. So,
okay, look.
Unfortunately, it's not great to talk about, but we have to.
No, we have to face it. We have to face it. I'm totally with you. Now, what I want to do is let's just rewind or pull back a little bit, just to kind of. Okay, I want to geek out for a second. You're clearly a photographer. In that, the photo you made of the last photo there of the shark tails, I note that even though you're shooting it with a wide angle, there is still distortion correction, right? So there's like the buildings all look straight. It's still it's still you're at the end of the day you're still formally or technically creating these very well-defined images. Okay, let's rewind. Okay, so when did you kind of look at a camera and feel a sense of, oh, wait a second, this can be something? When did photography turn into a tool of expression for you?
Well, I've always been interested in photography ever since I was a kid. And, just did it as hobby stuff, getting the Practical Photographer magazine and trying to take these beautiful sort of sunsets and landscapes and things like that. And it was nice. You make some pretty pictures, but they weren't really, at those times it was film, and you'd print them out and they'd sit in a album somewhere and you'd never look at them ever again. And then I started doing underwater, which is a bit more technical. And it was only on a trip to Malta that I started to see. I went back to Malta where I grew up, and I went back 28 years later, and I went snorkeling in the bay I used to snorkel in, and it was all dead. And that's when I started to realize, hang on a minute, this has happened in my lifetime. And the more you start looking, the more you start seeing. And that's when I sort of really started to send messages out and pictures out that necessarily weren't pretty, but they told the story. Some of them you have to censor. I have to self-censor some of the stuff I put out because I've seen some pretty barbaric and horrible things. And, you've got to really, as much as you want to tell the story, some of it is just, I had a video. I was in Sri Lanka with Paul, and we were filming blue whales at the time, and in the early mornings we would go down to Marissa in the south of Sri Lanka, where the port we went out from, and we'd go down early, go to the markets and see what sharks they were landing. And that was when we discovered manta rays and mobula rays being landed and having their gills cut out. And we started photographing this and thinking, this is odd. What's this for? And they said, oh, it's for the Chinese market. And we were like, we've never heard of this before. So we started documenting it, but I never forget, I had one video and they were hacking this mobula ray, and I had the camera, I was filming between this guy's legs as they were literally cleaving this straight down the middle of the center line. And it hit some gallbladder or something, this green goo sort of squirted out, and I just thought, oh my God, I feel sick. And I looked at the video footage and I said to Paul, I said, we're never going to be able to show this to anyone. It's worse than any horror movie. So yeah, you do tend to see some of these things and think, as barbaric as it is, you got to almost censor some of it.
If you can find,
because people will just switch off. If you see too much graphic stuff, they'll just switch off.
If you can make a screenshot from that footage to include, because it'll be on the website and on the sort of the YouTube slideshow and all this stuff. Sometimes it's hard to look at, but we need to be shaken out of a kind of sleepy state. So
I'd have to find it. It's on one of my old video files.
Yeah.
This is when I was shooting some high def it was on a cassette on a video.
Oh, okay.
I'll see if I can find it.
Okay, listen.
It was just more of an example of,
Sure.
People with the imagery. You can, and Paul and Alex would confirm as well, there's only so far you can go.
Right.
Because if you go too far, then people just turn off.
Sure.
And they don't want to see it. They don't want to share it. The same with all the animal cruelty stuff that you see, people sharing. It gets to a point where people just turn off and they just don't want to know anymore. They don't want to see it. They go into almost a state of denial. So there's a very fine balance of how far you can go to tell the story.
Of your work, which I find just so admirable, it's pretty funny. Like, I had Doug Woodring on here, and I was so like fawning, and I was so because he's done such really inspiring work that somebody commented, it's like, oh, what a nice little bromance you're having with Doug, and I was just like, but fuck, man, like, this guy's amazing. And in the same way, it's like, of all the things that you could put your attention to, of all the things that you could put your time and energy to, you're going out, you wake up at 6 a.m. or 5 a.m, you go out on your Zodiac, you get right in there. And so, okay, let's talk about two questions. One, what image, can you think of an image that you've made that was, that had a really powerful reaction, but was actually inspiring in a positive, aspirational sense? Or are they all just like kind of?
There was. I don't know if you remember. 2012, we had a massive typhoon here that hit, and a ship lost 6 containers of pre-production plastic pellets, the tiny little beads, they're called nurdles. Mm-hmm. They're almost like BB pellets. And we had 150 tons wash up on our beaches. And myself and Tracy Reed were the first ones to document it and try to get the message out. And I took one picture of Tracy holding her hands towards the camera with a handful of these. They look like beads. They look like pearls. I mean, they actually look really pretty. Trickling through her fingertips. And I took this one picture, and that we used as the sort of grabber for our social media, because we were writing to the government at the time and saying, look, we have a major problem here. And nobody reacted. We even sent it to newspapers and nobody reacted. And we put that out on social media. We set up a Facebook group, and within a day we had like 7,000 followers in Hong Kong. And then we realized that we don't need the media anymore, the mainstream media. You can do it on social media. And we motivated and connected with so many people across Hong Kong in such a fast time that everybody was playing catch up afterwards. We had, the government suddenly realized it's a massive problem. We called a meeting, and I ended up chairing the government's disaster meeting.
Oh, wow.
Which was funny, because see that on the minutes, Sea Shepherd chairing the disaster meeting for the pellet spill with all the government departments there. But it was great because we actually all got to work together, and we mobilized. One day we had 6,000 people on beaches, cleaning beaches. And these were people from all walks of life. We had young kids to grandparents. We had the government agencies. We had the people from the petrochemical company, Sinopec, whose bags they were. It wasn't their fault they were spilt, but it was their bags that were all over the beaches. We had NGOs. We had all these people side by side on the beach cleaning it, and it was beautiful.
Wow.
And that was the power of social media, and that was also the power of the image to evoke that started the ball rolling. Because without those photos, we couldn't have told the
Right.
story.
So how old how you don't have to how old are your kids?
8 and 12.
8 and 12.
Yeah. My son's 12, Jack, and Amber is 8.
Okay. Let's say they turn to you or some other 8 to 12-year-old or some other parent or whatever. Anybody turns to you and says, "Mr. Stokes, you've done so many great things." They wouldn't necessarily have that ridiculous accent, but they'd be like, "You've done these amazing things." What advice can you give them if they want to start following your footsteps or get involved? I mean, the fact that you have been so active with Sea Shepherd, and then that was a kind of evolution from what you'd been doing anyways, and now you've kind of gone even beyond Sea Shepherd to now for Oceans Asia. But so what kind of advice can you give people?
I think the most important thing is, conservation starts at home. You don't need to go to Antarctica, all the way to Antarctica, to save something. If everybody looked after their own backyard, there wouldn't be a problem. And there's so much people can do here. Everything down to what you put on your plate, knowing where it comes from, So even from your meal, you can start saving the world from what you have on your meal. You only need to watch Cowspiracy and movies like that, where you actually start seeing where your food is coming from.
Mm-hmm.
And all this myth of sustainable seafood. At the moment, I don't believe there is such a thing.
Right.
Of wild caught sustainable seafood.
Sure.
There's some fishing companies that are getting close, but they're also going out to sea alongside other vessels that are not sustainable.
Yeah.
And not trying to be. You've got illegal fishing going on. As soon as that comes in, there is no such thing as sustainable fishing. So, we have to get the enforcement, stop the illegal fishing boats. And if there's only legal fishing boats, then they can start talking about quota systems, bycatch, methods of catch. So then we might eventually, it's a pipe dream at the moment. But yeah, to go plant-based, we've seen a massive uptake in the switch to plant-based.
Yeah. Hey, Gary. Yeah, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 5 years ago, it was a little while ago. You had just come back, I think, from a tour with Sea Shepherd, and one of the things about, I think, going on a sort of expedition with Sea Shepherd is that they say, "Hey, listen, I hope you're okay eating vegan." And you were running a restaurant. You came back and you're just like, "Man, I don't know if I want to run this restaurant the way it was. I think I might get out of the restaurant business. I don't know. I think."
Yeah. I think I met you in Singapore Airport, didn't I?
Right.
We were chatting in Singapore Airport. I've been in food and beverage for a long time. And I've had shares in the restaurant. I opened a restaurant bar in Discovery Bay. I had small shares, and it got to the point where it was just going against everything I stood for. And I became, a hypocrite. I'm trying to save the world. And we were serving meat and fish at the time, even though I was already vegan. And I wanted out. And I said to the main shareholder, "I want out. I want to sell my shares." And he said, "Actually, I want out." And he was going to sell it to another chain. And I couldn't allow that to happen, because we had, staff that had been with us for 12 years, who were loyal. They were like family. So I said to my wife, "We're going to buy it." So we bought Hemingway's, and she said, "But then now you're going to have 100% in a restaurant that's serving it." I said, "No, I'm going to turn it vegan." And she said, "You're insane. We're going to lose all our money." And we changed it vegan anyway. And it's been well received, because we attracted a whole new demographic of people. And also with, like I said, the plant-based movement now is no longer a grassroots movement. It's now mainstream. I mean, we're seeing McDonald's serving plant-based meats. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
The work of David Young of Green Common is an inspiration. I mean, he really is paving the way in plant-based innovation. And we're seeing Impossible, Beyond, and now it's becoming almost acceptable. And we're seeing meat eaters coming in and saying, I'm going to have a couple of days a week where I'm not having meat.
Sure.
And that's fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where it goes back to where I say, what can people do? Look at what's on your plate. If it's an animal, for starters, it would have had an implication on the environment somewhere along the line.
Sure.
But yeah, other things, get in touch with your local beach cleanups. Look at what you're buying. So single-use plastic is one of the biggest threats to the ocean.
Mm-hmm.
Change one thing, just one thing in your daily routine. Take a reusable coffee cup or take a reusable bag. If everybody does a small thing, we can have a massive difference.
Sure.
But that's the thing.
I agree.
So you don't have to go all the way out to Antarctica or, I went to Timor chasing shark boats in Timor. You don't have to do that, but of course there is also that option out there. So,
mm-hmm. Well, Gary, you're way up there. Is there anything coming up that you would like to highlight and that you think, man, this is a hot topic, or anything else you want to basically bring attention to? And I will do my best to.
Well, obviously, the most current thing at the moment and on everybody's mind is COVID-19, and everybody needs to stay safe and wear a mask. I mean, it's not even an issue, but make sure it's a reusable mask, please, because we don't want to be finding another 1.56 billion masks washing up in the environment.
Yeah.
So I think that's probably the one message to get out there at the moment is, stay safe. But if you've got to wear a mask, wear a reusable.
Huge. It sounds in the background that you're like remodeling the kitchen. Are you taking down a wall?
No, I'm actually sat on a balcony and I've got the waves breaking right below the balcony.
Nice. Poor you. Sounds like
it's
a rough
gorgeous.
life.
Beautiful day in Hong Kong.
Oh, Gary, thank you so much. You're the best.
Thanks for having me, Ryan. It's been great to chat.
Shooting it raw?
Yes. Shooting it